Hi, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Through the Back Door. Today we have the amazing Caroline Zimbalist, who is designer in New York City, and we have lots of amazing things to talk about. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Claire. So excited to be on this podcast. My name is Caroline Zimbalist, and I was born and raised in New York, specifically Long Island. And then I moved to the city, attended Parsons School of Design, and I've been living in the city for about 10 years now. I absolutely love it, and I probably will be in New York forever.
You love New York. It's like, this is it.
Yeah, love New York. Like even this past year, I kind of moved to Queens, so I discovered Brooklyn, and I'm starting to like. It's funny, like it's just a whole nother world. So yeah, I really love New
Yeah.
York.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I do too. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
you know what? This is good. I can't really see myself like anywhere, you know, in the foreseeable future, that is. So let's go ahead and just talk a little bit. Like, what was your journey to getting into fashion design? Like, why did you want to go to school and go to Parsons and all those things?
Yeah, great question. My whole childhood, I've always been painting, drawing, sculpting, like collaging mixed media, and I always was interested in 2D art, but then as I got into high school, I started really being intrigued with like more 3D. And I kind of felt like, all right, how can I take my paintings and maybe create like a more of a 3D object with them? And that kind of lend me into this fashion design world where I actually started experimenting with like paintings at home and kind of stitching areas onto a t-shirt I had, collaging them onto shirts and sort of creating these like fine art t-shirts. Um, and then another thing was that what really stood out was like in high school, I everybody shopped at the same stores, so I
Hmm.
really was like, how can I go into the store and buy the same item but turn it into something new? So I would go in, buy, I remember buying dresses and then slicing them
Hmm.
all in half, like at 7 a.m. in the morning before class. And I would just be like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna wear this as like a crop top and a skirt today. And
Mm.
being really excited about what I was wearing. And that's when I was like, wow, like I really love styling myself and I really love fashion. So my art and design sort of trickled its way into fashion design in high school.
I love that. What stores were these? Just curious.
Let's see, there was, oh my God, in Long Island, there's a store called Mixology that like every
Okay.
single girl would go and buy at like basics, Mixology. There was like Max and Gino's, these boutique stores in Long Island. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, I remember I worked in a Goodwill and I was like, oh, we're cutting everything. A similar
Yes.
experience. I love
Yes,
that. It's
yes.
a great way to experiment and like, yeah, like look different. A lot of people want that kind of like unique mark. And I think that's
Yeah,
why a lot of people get into fashion. I love that.
exactly.
So basically, like, this is what inspired your career, like just wanting like a unique thing to wear.
Yeah.
So I was just curious, like, what are your biggest maybe fashion influences that you have?
I mean, the first name that honestly pops into my head every time I think about this type of question is Diane von Furstenberg. I'm
Okay.
constantly inspired by her as like a fashion designer, but also just as like all around like an entrepreneur. I think
Hmm.
she, I that was one of my first jobs post graduation. So I worked in the retail store in meatpacking, and the way that she set up this studio where there was the ground floor of retail, then there was the design studios, the atelier, and it kind of led up to where she was living. And I
Oh,
felt
that's
like
so
this,
cool.
yeah, like she had this real house and it doesn't exist much anymore. And I'm just very inspired by that like full circle collaborative practice. So having
Mm.
everything kind of accessible to you and being able to just go upstairs and talk with the seamstress or the designer or the print designer and um yeah, that to me is like the most inspiring, rather than
Hmm.
like a particular style or something. I think in the bigger picture, how
Hmm.
she has like run her business is really impactful.
Yeah, so we just
Yeah,
like the aspect of being like fully involved. Everything's like one big
immersed.
like universe. Yeah, I love that. I think that's really
Totally.
cool. Yeah, so wait, so you liked her when you were younger and then you ended up getting to work for her?
I did, yes.
This is
So
so
yeah,
cool.
I've always liked her. I remember on Amazon Prime there was like the House of DDF show, and it was like hilarious, like a reality TV show of all these girls trying to work for her.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I applied right after graduation. I got the job, and it was seriously an amazing. Everybody that worked there was just quality people, and
Hmm.
it really reflects her. I think, yeah, I really enjoyed that experience.
So basically, after high school, you went to Parsons and then you started developing something that's part of your major design focus now, which is the bioplastics, right? Was that done during school?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what was that? Like, what was your influence, your inspiration for all
Yeah.
these?
So it was around junior year of Parsons. I was in a class called Design Studio, which all of the fashion majors are required to take. It's like 2 6-hour studio courses throughout the week.
Hmm.
And I remember part of my my inspiration was kind of fantasy movies, Narnia, kind of this like hidden hidden pathway, like enchanted forest
Hmm.
theme. So I was trying to basically create textiles that were inspired by this.
Hmm.
So I went on a journey of flocking tulle. I tried different chemicals that would kind of like remove fibers to create like different textures on fabrics. And
Hmm.
I was really just interested in like creating something from scratch. So what I did initially was I used something called acrylic pouring medium, where it's a basically like a transparent acrylic paint. So it's like imagine just like the thickness of a acrylic paint without any color. So
Hmm.
I was kind of like pouring this substance on a nonstick surface, and I was adding colors and adding like things to it, how I always did as a child, like collaging, painting. And then
Hmm.
overnight, how acrylic paint dries on a canvas, the acrylic pouring medium dried on this nonstick surface. So I was able to peel it off the ground, and actually it was like a malleable
Oh,
textile. It
cool.
was, yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a piece of fabric. So
Okay.
I brought that into class and everybody was really intrigued. I mean, from my whole presentation, that was the one detail they all called out. They were like, I don't know what this is, but you have something there. And it was like a
Hmm.
5x5 swatch, but I remember everybody commented on it and it really stood
Hmm.
out. So that was kind of like my first excitement of a new textile, I guess. And then
Hmm.
into senior year, which was really when it all exploded, was I was in my thesis class and I was talking to my professor and he asked if I had ever heard of bioplastics.
Hmm.
And at the time, I had never even heard of that word. So I just went on like a few hour research delve on the internet, bioplastics, how to make bioplastics, and I came across something called the Bioplastic Cookbook, which is accessible to everybody online. It's like a public recipe book.
Hmm.
And I really took it seriously. I went on Amazon, I ordered every single ingredient, and I just started experimenting. So um, it really was like from there was just history. Like I started
Yeah.
experimenting, develop swatches, and to this day, I use a lot of those recipes in my practice now, a variety of materials, and yeah, that's how it
That's
started.
amazing. So basically you like tried this one thing that was like acrylic based, so it's not very like sustainable or whatever.
Correct.
It's like, and then you're
And
like, oh,
toxic.
there's some, and toxic. Yeah. And then you're like, wait, there's something here. I kind of love those moments when you're like, oh, everybody likes this. Maybe I
Yeah.
should go this way. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's
Yeah.
important to note. Like when you're in school, like kind of keep track of like what like people find interesting and then maybe that's like the direction. And if it's like exciting to you and like new and brings you like all this energy, to build into like a very big thing like obviously you have with your collection. So yeah. I love that. So basically it was in your senior thesis. So like let's break it down because I'm really curious because like right
Mhm.
now like if people aren't aware I'm kind of jumping but you have a brand, you're doing a lot of different things. So
Yes.
I kind of am really curious about the transition from school, having this bioplastic, this excitement.
Yes.
What do you think like was so you graduated, you were in the show, like the graduation show?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Do you think that that was like what was your like step where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be a brand, I'm gonna like go for this like after
Yeah.
school?
I know that's a really great question. And that's really like what the pivotal moment was because, we're all graduating from like one of the best design schools in the world. So it's kind of
Hmm.
like for an outsider, it's like, okay, all these people are going to be selling and doing these things, but it's very low percentage of people that actually stay in the industry or make it.
Yeah.
So For me, I remember I had this bioplastic, right? So I developed the
Hmm.
swatches, I incorporated it into my thesis collection. Not quite how it is now, but definitely in an interesting way. It was more like
Hmm.
armor and like shells and harder, more rigid pieces.
Okay.
But I remember I had my girl come down in the show,
Hmm.
and I think 1 week after graduation, I don't even think it was a week. I took it upon myself. I researched some new stores that were opening in New York City, boutique,
Mm.
home decor, um, maybe accessory related concept stores that was like really emerging during like 2019 time, like this whole new concept store.
Hmm.
So I actually cold called or cold emailed one of the stores. Specifically, the store was 4510. Shout out to 4510 because
Okay.
the email somehow made it to the CEO. I don't know how, but it was just like a contact us email. It made it to the CEO. I introduced myself. I have this new material. I've started sculpting it into vases and little home objects. I would love to have a display in your store. And the CEO, she got back to me, I think within a day, and she's like, "This is absolutely beautiful. I'd love to meet you and see the pieces." So that following week, I brought in like a few little samples that I had, and that was something I did a lot in the beginning, was carrying these physical samples with me. And
Hmm.
right, she was super intrigued, and she offered me a event at the store. It was, I think, 2 months after graduating
Oh,
Parsons. I
wow.
had an event at the store where I displayed objects the size of this cup. It was small little vases. At that
Hmm.
point, I wasn't even aware that I could make them big yet. I was really just starting out. And I
Hmm.
maybe like 20, 30 people showed up. But again, everybody was so excited about the material
I
and the
love
story
that.
behind it. Um, so that was kind of my first pivotal moment. I would say that is really where it took off because
Hmm.
that one experience allowed me to converse with buyers, the CEO, the store,
Hmm.
like put myself in a new environment and like repping my own brand now. And I remember even that saying like, "Oh, this is my brand," felt kind of bizarre to me because throughout my whole life I was always creating the work. So then I was like, if this is my brand, I've had a brand since I was born. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like this is just my art. But yeah, I guess this is my brand. It's Caroline Zimbalist. Um, and then from that experience, I had the confidence to really just cold email any store I wanted. And I did that. I did that for
Yeah.
weeks. I tried, it sounds crazy, but I would sit in a coffee shop and email 200 stores a day. And I did that
Hmm.
for weeks. And I received no's, hundreds of no's, but I received a few yeses. And those few yeses were what kept leveraging the brand.
Hmm. Yeah, because I could really see that. Like, you're getting out of school, everyone's you have that moment where everyone's kind of paying attention to the graduates and they're like,
Yes.
who's doing what? And especially the people in the school, they're like, who's doing these things? And like, what I think is interesting to point out is the fact that you didn't necessarily go the fashion route to get
Yes.
your name out there. You kind of went to this more like home decor, like option because you did
Yeah.
have this medium that could kind of be both worlds, which I think is like
Right.
really interesting and collectible and fun. So
Totally.
yeah, and then that puts you in, yeah, like again, puts you in these new spaces, you're meeting new people. It's kind of validating this sense of like, I'm a designer, I have a brand, I can cold email, I could do these things. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
And what was interesting was at the time, like the material really was only hard. I hadn't quite developed how it could be
Mm.
flexible. So in my head, I really didn't even see it yet as like a garment or something. So
Oh.
it's really evolved. So if anything, the presentation, the event was more like, what is this new material? And it was like a
Hmm.
really good intro.
Yeah, because people are also like, because what year was this, by the way?
It was 2019.
Okay, yeah, and I think like then like it was a very like it's still new, but I think then it was like very new, very exciting. People are getting into like alternative fabrics like, cactus leather, things like that. So,
Exactly.
yeah, it was like definitely a good time for that too. So, okay, so then you're in these stores, you're meeting these people, and then you're just like getting offers. So, what do you think again, like stepping from that to the next point, you said you started to move into a more like malleable textile because that's when you were considering it could be clothing.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I basically experimented with, I started researching a lot of like bioplastic flexible agents and how to make
Mm.
bioplastic flexible. And then,
Hmm.
um, just incorporating new natural ingredients and kind
Hmm.
of testing different things out. Like, believe it or not, like a lot of the similar ingredients that we have in like natural conditioner and shampoo is like similar to stuff I'm using. That's kind of what's
Oh.
giving our hair like a flexible, like soft
Uh,
look. It's very
okay.
interesting. There's like a lot of crossovers.
Yeah, you're like
Um,
conditioning it.
yes, exactly. Like it's almost all the garments are like conditioned bioplastic.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
But yeah, once I saw the possibility of the flexible quality of it, my
Mhm.
mind just went. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this could be anything." Like it's just, I think the first thought I was like, "Oh, shower curtain," or like, crazy things like this, but I've refined it a bit now.
So yeah, so let's kind of hear like what you're doing now. So you're moving along, doing all these things, and then you do a fashion week or something. Was that like the next phase?
Yes, exactly. No, exactly, Claire. So the next phase was this grand presentation, right? I've had these years building up. I sold a few vases, there's definitely like a hype of the art. Um, and the years leading up to my first New York Fashion Week show, I was kind of working at a more slower pace. So I was doing maybe like 5 looks a year and then doing one photo shoot with one model and then really like kind of banking on that for the next few months, like using those images and being like, wow,
Hmm.
these are great, like 5 new techniques. But then there was something that happened where something just like came over me in the new year or even like in 2023, like mid throughout the year where the traction really started to build up. So celebrities
Oh.
were starting to pull. Um, and I was getting requests for bigger people that had an influence and were interested in wearing the pieces.
Hmm.
So I was like, wow, if it's making such a mark over there, like I need to present this to the world. Like I think it's really
Hmm.
time. So I decided to do a 24 look bioplastic fashion show and each piece was more than half the garment was bioplastic in combination with natural ready to wear pieces that I also designed.
Hmm.
So, with my fashion design background, I did have the fundamentals, the sewing, the pattern making, and everything. So I was able to kind of create tech packs and work with the factory to do some basic ready to wear styles. That way, the whole collection didn't feel so bizarre in a way. Like,
Hmm.
I wanted people to be introduced to the brand as a wearable brand. It's not just like, of course, it's art that we can look at and it's beautiful, but how could we wear it? So pairing bioplastic with more accessible basic pieces was kind of my first shot at New York Fashion Week and it was really successful. It was great. I mean, it was crazy, but it was great.
Hmm. What do you think are the things that are like super important, like for people who are interested in doing like a fashion week? Like, what do you think is the most important thing for doing that as a
Hmm.
designer, or
No,
like
it's a
the
really
thing to
good
pay attention
question.
to? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the first thing that honestly comes to mind is the venue. I know that sounds
Okay.
crazy, but it really determines how the show is going to feel and be and the movement of the whole show. You can have a beautiful collection, but I do feel like presentation is more than half of it.
Hmm.
So I would say the venue something to really consider and just staying authentic to your personal style and making the
Hmm.
whole show 360, the music, the lighting, the shoes, the makeup, everything just should feel like you.
Yeah.
And even the venue should feel you. So yeah, there's a lot of important parts to keep in mind, but I would say the venue is like one big thing to start out.
Yeah, because it's kind of like the host of this like world you're building. So you want
Right.
it to feel like you're stepping into like,
Exactly.
like similar to the Diane von Furstenberg like house, you know?
It's like you're stepping out of the like 13th Street and you're stepping into the store, the world, the
Hmm.
portal.
I didn't realize it was so recent where it's like this like momentum kept building. And I think that's something to kind of note is that you have been doing this for the last like 4 or 5 years, like since you
Yes.
graduated, and you're at a point now where you're starting to like build momentum, but there's been a
Yes.
lot of work behind the scenes. And I think that's like also really important because I think a lot of emerging designers tend to get really defeated if it's been 5, 6 years and they're in this space. So this is kind of a really good reminder to just like keep trying to be like as authentic and make the things. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So basically, like all this success, like one of the things that you have experienced, which is amazing, is like the CFDA what is it? It's a
The
competition.
Yeah, the Vogue Fashion Fund Award.
I'm curious, like, how did that happen? Did they approach you? Do you apply? Like, what were the
Yeah.
steps to that?
No, no, great. I love this topic. So they do an annual award every year where
Hmm.
you apply and you have to be eligible. So I believe you have to be new, the brand has to be 2 years or less, only like 2 years old, sorry.
Okay.
So it has to be 2 years old. You have to be in the US. There's a few other requirements, but it is like an open application. So you apply as a designer, you're required to fill out, the first phase was maybe about like 20 written prompts, all about
Okay.
yourself, your brand, your business, the future, your where
Hmm.
you need help, where you
Hmm.
see success, where you see weakness, like a very detailed questionnaire. And alongside that, you submit your latest 2 seasons of lookbooks and a I believe that's it for phase one. I believe it's more of just like a get to know the designer, the artist.
Hmm.
So that was the first step. And then about a month later, I heard back that I made it to phase two, which was really exciting because,
Yeah.
like I just had mentioned, I had my first show in the same year that I'm applying to this award. And the response was so positive that
Hmm.
I had that confidence to, of course, apply to the award, but then
Yeah.
to be recognized and make it to phase two felt like a whole nother accomplishment in itself. I was like, wow, the CFDA board is really recognizing that I want to make it as a designer in this country, and
Oh.
maybe this type of fine art might not be exactly what they're seeing, but there is a future and we could tweak it.
Yeah.
So I then began my phase two application, and there was a little bit of pressure because now I was like, oh my God, like I gotta go. So phase two was really intense. You had to answer, I would say, like 30 to 35 written prompts. These were much more detailed about how you would allocate the budget, the grant money that they would give you if you
Hmm.
won. Um,
Yeah.
if you won like $300,000. So how would you allocate that money? What's your 3 year plan? What's your 5 year plan? You have to be very specific. Like this is really like almost breaking it down into quarters for them, like how you plan to um succeed. And
Hmm.
they also want to know how they could help you. So, you're not just pitching like I'm this amazing designer, I'm succeeding. They want to know that they're going to help you succeed. So, what almost like provide a gap that you could be like, well, I have this and this and this, but the CFDA could provide this resource. Um,
Hmm.
so that was something to really keep in mind, positioning it
Hmm.
in that way, because
Yeah.
I do need help. All emerging designers could use help in
Yeah.
some sort of the industry. And then there was also a 25-page max portfolio required, and that was also an extensive process, physical portfolio. So, getting everything printed on nice paper, kind of layering, using vellum, and, just providing them like a beautiful piece of art alongside all of the other necessary information. And then we had to provide a 2-minute video introduction on ourselves. Yes, so it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
It was a
No,
lot
it's
of
yeah.
work. I think they gave you 6 weeks between phase one and phase two, like once you found out to submit for phase three. I
Hmm.
did not make phase three, but I was close.
Hmm.
All the phase three winners are amazing. I mean, I'm rooting for so many of them. It was an amazing experience, and it did not discourage me from submitting next year. Like, you better believe
Yeah.
I'm be submitting again. Um,
Yeah. It's
so it
like a
was
huge
really
accomplishment to just
right.
even be picked from. I mean, how many people you think submit for the first round?
I've through some research, I think about like 700 to 800 people submit, and then they narrow it down to like 50 or 60. So if I was in that 50 or 60, that's an honor. So and then now there's the ten finalists who all get some sort of mentorship, and it's an amazing program. I really think one day I will be there.
Oh, definitely. I totally see it. And I think it's like, like what do you think was like a big learning process in this?
Yeah, I say like my probably the biggest takeaway was maybe being a little even more specific as to what I
Hmm.
need. One thing that is on my side with my brand that's amazing is the whole sustainability aspect of it. And, while I was answering these questions and everything, of course that's in my mind, but I don't think it was like a priority while answering these questions.
Mhm.
So I think like prioritizing the sustainability aspect of my material and my work might intrigue them a little bit more or be more willing to help or something along those lines.
Mhm.
I just think that's like a really key point that I can't forget about my work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's like that it is in that sustainable reign and like people are looking for that. I feel like almost most emerging designers have some kind of aspect of like sustainability in
Yeah.
some
Right.
capacity. So, since we're in the topic of sustainability, like what do you see like in general in the industry in the next 5 years? Is it more sustainability? Is it smaller collections? Is it more focused on emerging designers? Like where do you see fashion like kind of pinholing and focusing on?
Yeah, I would say a combination. I would say it's a combination of all of those things. I would say I personally think that there will be a whole, again, like this whole new wave of materiality, new materials, in a more elevated way. I do think, yes, smaller collections. And I also really think upcycling and collaboration is like truly the future of fashion. I think, there's so many garments that exist, and it's like, why make more? Almost kind of thinking like, even this shirt, like when I'm done with it, like what am I going to do with it? So it's like, well, there's all these gorgeous beads. I could repurpose all the beads and maybe incorporate them into my next design. So I really think like implementing more of a detailed life cycle of a garment is what I'm really
Mhm.
intrigued with. So like when you buy this garment, maybe there's instructions of like when you go to discard it or when you have those thoughts, these are the options of what could be done. So yeah, so there's more of like thought of the aftercare and like the second life. I think that's really intriguing. I think like that too because my material, when I work with my material, it has this capability of you can actually submerge fabrics like into the wet liquid when I'm making it. So I automatically think like, okay, when I'm done with this dress or this top, like this fabric is so gorgeous, I'm just gonna like recreate something with the bioplastic, and it already has a second life in my head. So to me, I'm like, I'm already recycling this product. But I think more people have to get on board with that. And
Yeah, like
brands,
there's instructions how to like recycle it or like put it in your
yeah.
garden or something.
No,
Yeah.
exactly that. Like, could you imagine all these beads were actually like seeds or something? And then like when I was
Oh my
done,
God.
like I like could like plant them.
I
Just
love that.
ideas like that. Like it's just really creating like a full life cycle instead of just saying it, like let's do it.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that is like it is like because it's like cool, you got the item, you wear it for a season, then it's out of trend, and then it's like all these like fast fashion things or like
Yeah.
it's always has a lot of waste and there is a lot of nice things to be thinking about, like even the bead thing, like how lovely
Yeah.
is that? Like I
Yes.
can
Oh my
plant
goodness.
20 seeds,
Yeah.
like I can have a full garden, this is lettuce, this is tomato. I like love.
To buy the top and like actually be like interested in the brand, because I think people really crave the connection and the story and the nostalgia about it. So that's just like a point to really.
Yeah, and you mentioned collaborations. I know that you've done like a couple collaborations, and I think like
Yes.
as fashion keeps, kind of getting more open, it's less like hidden and more transparent. I think there are going to be more collaborations, and we're already seeing that. But how do you feel about that? Like collaborating with different brands and doing those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wonderful. I think like that is also like one of my biggest, like something that's helped my brand grow and gain momentum
Hmm.
and popularity is these collaborations because, you're taking like me and then like another brand that has completely different clientele, especially if you're collaborating with a non-fashion or a non-art company. And, you're having completely different eyes on something and then you come together to create something and it's it's just there's something really magical in it, and I think it also opens up like the artist and the designer's eyes from like it basically like for me when I collaborate with these companies and they come with me to these ideas like it's just so interesting to be able to like push the material in new ways. So
Hmm.
for example, something I'm working on now is like creating an edible version of my bioplastic.
Oh, cool.
So, I think through collaboration, like you're able to develop things you just wouldn't have thought of.
Hmm.
Um, and I think more and more fashion companies are open to collaborating with companies that have nothing to do with fashion. Like I know like Kate Spade just did something with Heinz ketchup, So
Oh, whoa.
yeah, so there's like a lot of these like almost odd crossovers, but I think there's something kind of special and niche in it. I just am
Hmm.
waiting to see like how it proceeds.
Yeah. Like I think I saw you did something with like it was like a pea coat or something, and then you had your bioplastic on it, or like
Yes.
buttons, it's like kind of cool to see maybe something that would never do something like colorful and bright or like that kind of shape, and
Right.
then you have your plastics on it. It's like it's a cool collaboration. I also think
Yes.
it's just generally like a lot of like, it is that mutual help. It is like you both trying to succeed in like different
Yeah.
ways and reach different audiences, which I think is
Right.
really important. And
Right.
speaking of audiences, like what do you think about social media being, because if you're a small designer, you tend to be doing all the things. You're like the social media
Yes.
manager, you're the sewer, like how do you
Yes.
think that's like affecting your brand, fashion? Like what do you think?
I mean, I love Instagram. I seriously think
Hmm.
it's like one of the biggest tools I've used for my brand's growth and just like me as an artist. I mean, I'm screenshotting things all day. Like I'll see someone making something and in like a cooking field and all of a sudden I'm like, "Oh my God, I need to like try that technique in this." And there's just so
Yeah.
much inspiration that I love it. But as far as like posting and social media, I think it's really important to almost create a world of your own in your social media. So like I almost look at my art like it's its own universe. Like it, you know, if you go to my page, it feels that way. Like it's like what is this? Like I'll post of course editorials, I'll post lookbooks, but I'll always make sure I post something a little bit more personal and like more kind of touching in my sense of humor. So like I might edit like a bioplastic vessel with me climbing on the side of it, or
Hmm.
like post, a video of me like throwing it outside, or it's kind of like positioned on a building or on something that we wouldn't really see. And kind of like creating this like world of your own with your product or your art is what really like draws people in.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's really important. It's just like having a voice with everything you post. And, I think it does come a little natural to me. Like I love like curating and like posting these funny things, but
Hmm.
I do think, yeah, like what I said, just make your art your world.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that's like
Mhm.
the biggest takeaway, from like being younger, seeing all these things. Diane van Furstenberg, CFDA.
Yes.
I mean, because I also know you like created a world in your CFDA project. You're like, this is what my
Yes.
store would look like.
Yes,
So
exactly that.
yeah, you want to like
Yeah.
show people your universe. And I think that's like Instagram is great for that.
Yeah,
And I think
I
people
completely
want to like
agree.
work with you when you see it. That's amazing.
Okay,
What would
amazing.
you tell somebody who like wants to do what you're doing, essentially?
Okay, I love that. I would first just go for it. You just
Hmm.
gotta be ambitious and go for it. I would
Hmm.
say if you're not doing it, nobody's gonna be doing it.
Hmm.
I thought cold emailing was crazy until look where I am now. So
Yeah.
nothing is weird, nothing is crazy. Just do it. Be crazy and do it. And just start posting, just be impulsive. Like I would say I'm a pretty impulsive person. So sometimes that's a strength, sometimes that's a weakness, but I think for my brand it's been a strength. Like I think being impulsive, going with my gut, trusting my gut intuition, trusting your intuition, just really believing in yourself. And if somebody has like, if you've seen the excitement in people's faces by showing your art and presenting it, you have something good. So just freaking
Hmm.
do it.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, before we sign off, is there anything you want to tell people about what you're working on next, what to expect?
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you so much, Claire. So yeah, I would say currently I am actually sitting in this hotel room. I am a artist resident of the Ace Hotel in Brooklyn for the month of August. I'm going to be creating with my bioplastics, I'll be creating like a futuristic world in the lobby. It'll be an installation of sculptures and it'll be on display from September 12th through the end of November. September 12th will be like an opening party. So I'll make sure to send you that invitation, Claire. And that's what I'm working on now, as well as my second show. So that's a little bit fine art here. And then September will be my second New York Fashion Week presentation. 21 looks this time, a little bit more refined, elevated, wearable. I'm super excited to present that collection. So these are the two priorities right now for me.